Lesson 1K, the other lipids. The second group of lipids is the ever-important phospholipid. This molecule makes up the cell envelope, also known as the cell membrane, of all plants and animal cells. It is very similar in structure to that of triglycerides with one major difference. Both triglycerides and phospholipids have glycerol and fatty acid tails, but phospholipid only has two fatty acid tails, and in place of the third fatty acid, it has a polar phosphate group with a choline attached to the tip. This one difference has a huge role in forming the cell membrane, also known as the plasma membrane. This phosphate head is attracted to water due to its polar nature. We say it's hydrophilic, or water-loving. The non-polar fatty acid tail is said to be hydrophobic, or water-hating. So when the phospholipid is placed in water, the water-loving heads point outwards into the water, while the water-hating ends point inwards so that each phospholipid tail is essentially touching each other, creating a ball called a micelle, or one would think. When phospholipids are introduced to a container of water, they often spontaneously form a double layer of lipid, or a lipid bilayer. In this lipid bilayer, one sheet of phospholipids will have their polar heads point out to the water, while their fatty acid tails are pointed in the opposite direction, where it is matched up to the second layer of phospholipids, where their tails pair up to the first layer, and their heads point out into the water in the opposite direction. This video shows how much affinity the hydrophobic tails of one layer has with the tails of the second layer, with the polar heads pointing outwards towards the water. This second animation shows the process of the phospholipids lining up to create the lipid bilayer. The green represents the hydrophobic fatty acids, while the pink, blue, white, and red represents the water-loving phosphate heads. This double layer may ball up to create a cavity of water in the middle. This would eventually end up as the internal of the cell where the organelles in the nucleus would reside, in a pocket of watery substance. The next set of lipids are the steroids. These function as structural components of cell membranes. They are complex multi-ring structures that often have an alcohol or an OH group attached to them. This makes it polar and therefore hydrophilic at the OH groups, while the other section may be hydrophobic. One member of the steroid family is cholesterol. It is a structural component of cell membranes, which improves the flexibility and fluidity of the membrane. Testosterone and estrogen are chemical signals known as hormones. Cortisol is an anti-inflammatory, while aldosterone helps with blood pressure. The last group of lipids is the waxes. These molecules are very long chains of saturated fatty acids. They are nonpolar and extremely hydrophobic. Because of the many hydrogen to carbon bonds, which are superstable, they release a lot of energy when these bonds are broken. This can be seen when candles are burnt, releasing heat and light energy. This occurs when the hydrogen and carbon bonds are broken to create carbon dioxide.